Mr. Pence is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, and you don't need to use theme music for my comments. Mr. Ackerman got a music bed, I just heard. I want to rise in strong support of the amendment by Mr. Duncan from South Carolina, and I appreciate his leadership. And the level of freshman hazing that's taking place from some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle is memorable, but unpersuasive. I particularly appreciate Mr. Berman revising and extending his characterization that this piece of legislation was stupid. But the use of the terms Mr. Connolly referred to this legislation as crude. My good friend Mr. Ackerman's referred to it as a helter-skelter approach. The gentleman from Virginia said that this is evidence of Republicans having a binary worldview, isolationists retreating from the world. Since when did economic aid from the United States of America become an entitlement in the world? I'm trying to get that. And the suggestion that there should be some rational limitation on how we use our increasingly scarce taxpayer dollars in the area of foreign aid to governments is not the same as what some of those accusations portend. Quite frankly, I talked to a lot of people back around Hoosier State and across this country who just soon we did away with all foreign aid. I'm not one of those people. But I do think that the way we've seen the United Nations evolve of late, it makes the late President John F. Kennedy quite a prophet when he said in his inaugural address, we must not permit the United Nations to become a forum for invective against the West. Now, the problem with President Kennedy's statement is he wasn't focused enough. It hasn't become a forum for invective against the West. It's become a forum for invective against the United States of America and Israel. And I say on an informational basis to my friend Mr. Ackerman, with whom I had the privilege of serving as the ranking member of the Middle East Subcommittee when he chaired that subcommittee, I know his heart for Israel. He may not be aware. A significant number of the recorded votes that would be affected here are anti-Israel votes. And if a country consistently voting against Israel in the United Nations should have no bearing on the United States providing economic aid to that country, well, I think I've got a different viewpoint on that.
Would the gentleman yield?
I will when I'm done. Another thing the gentleman from Virginia said, a great power does not retreat from its responsibilities. Well, we have a responsibility first to the American people, second to America's vital national interest, third to America's treaty allies. And America's opponents and detractors and enemies don't make the list. I have no responsibility to those countries where I grew up. I mean, some just said, if we only give money to people who like us, well, isn't it equally ridiculous to mostly give money to people who don't like us? And can I remind my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, we are the biggest benefactor of this forum for invective against the United States and Israel in the world. And I worked with the late Henry Hyde, whose portrait adorns these walls, and we tried to pass the United Nations UN Reform Act. He let this backbencher be a co-author of one of those versions of the bill with him. I've worked in a spirit of partnership with colleagues I respect on the opposite side of this panel. This institution is a serious problem. And we were talking earlier about the war in Iraq, if the run-up to the war in Iraq wasn't evidence of the toothlessness and near uselessness of the United Nations in confronting tyrants in the world, which was the reason it was created, was to confront tyranny as it rose, then I don't know what was. One resolution after another, one unenforced resolution after another. The United States of America eventually had to act. And I want to commend
I thank
Mr.
the
Duncan.
gentleman.
He's taken a bit of a pounding today.
Thank
He's
you.
tough enough for it. But I strongly support this amendment and urge
Thank
my
you very
colleagues
much,
to do
Mr.
likewise.
Pence. Mr. Cicilline.